The Sign of the Cat by Sandra Havriluk. Sandra Havriluk has written for Highlights. In this short story, a boy named Chet sees his grandmother open their home to people who are in need during the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a time period in America during the 1930s. People had a hard time finding jobs, making money, and being able to provide for their families. As we are listening today, you're going to see the boy named Chet have a drastic change in perspective about the people he considers to be hobos. If you want to follow along, please go to commonlit.org for the full text. The Sign of the Cat. "Chet, pass that fried chicken to our guests," Grandma said. My eyes lingered on the plumper pieces. I knew that after our guests served themselves, only the scrawniest parts would be left. Guests like these men knocked on our door almost every day asking for handouts. They were hopping trains looking for jobs. Everyone called them askers or hobos, but not Grandma. She'd remind me, "If your dad hadn't gotten that job at Uncle Will's shop in Florida, he could be riding the rails too." Not my dad. He dressed in neatly pressed clothes. His razor-clean face smelled like Burma shave. These men wore stained, wrinkled clothes and had scraggly beards. Ray, Tony, and Sal had been the ones to knock on our door tonight. It felt strange to call grown-ups by their first names, but Tony explained, "No need for last names in Hooverville." People blamed President Hoover for our country's hard times, so Hooverville is what they called the places where hobos set up camp. Ray passed the chicken plate to me. Only a small drumstick and a tiny wing were left. "Your turn, Chet," my grandma smiled. Her eyes weren't smiling, though. Worry weighed down on her like a wet woolen shawl. The days were getting even tougher. Dad sent less and less money each month. We bartered eggs and milk for flour and sugar. When I outgrew my shirts, Grandma sewed me new ones using feed sacks. Starting at the food, I thought of one way that I could cheer her up. I put the drumstick onto my grandma's plate and put the tiny wing on mine. "I filled up on apples I picked today," I said, hoping she couldn't hear my stomach growl. She smiled again, and this time so did her eyes. Over dessert of apple pie, Grandma invited the men to bunk on our porch. Pie stuck in my throat. Now we'd have to share breakfast, too. I'd be lucky to get a spoonful of egg or a half a biscuit. My grandma patted my shoulder. "Fetch some covers for them, Chet." I snatched quilts from the chest and marched to the porch. Tony and Ray were playing cards with a tattered deck. Sal was whittling. "Ever whittled, son?" he asked. "No, sir, I ain't." "You haven't," Ray corrected me. Seeing my surprise, he winked. "I may not look like it, but I used to be a college professor." Sal smiled. "Watch and learn." He shaved bits and pieces and chunks of wood until a cap formed. He handed it to me. "Your gatepost is marked with the sign of the cat. It means the kind lady of the house won't turn you away." That's why so many askers knocked on our door. An idea flashed in my head. "What's a sign that would make people stay away?" I asked. Tony slashed 3 diagonal lines in the air. our guests left in the morning, I checked the gatepost. On the bottom slat, a tiny cat, drawn in a black coal, stared at me. I scrubbed it off with Grandma's detergent, then drew the tiny symbol Tony had shown me. That night, Grandma and I ate alone. I stuffed myself with sliced ham and buttermilk, cornbread, trying not to think about the askers going hungry. When I crawled into my bed, I had a hard time falling to sleep. I'd eaten too much, and my thoughts kept returning to the sign on the gatepost. Part of me wanted to go outside and scrub it off, but I finally drifted to sleep.
Chet?
A deep voice interrupted my dreams. I cracked open an eye. Moonlight was streaming through my window. Son. I bolted up. Even with his beard and tattered clothing, I recognized him. Dad, you're back!
Sorry.
He mussed up my hair. Uncle Will's shop closed. I hopped a dozen trains to get back home. Soon, we were digging into a midnight snack of Grandma's flapjacks. Showered and shaved, Dad looked like himself again. I wondered how many doors he had knocked on asking for food, the way Tony, Ray, and Sal had.
What have you got there, Chet?
Dad pointed to Sal's wooden cat sitting by my plate. A guest whittled it for me, I said, picking it up. I explained about the sign of the cat, feeling guilt wash over me again. Dad nodded, looking at me closely.
I kept an eye out for those signs, too.
Had he seen the symbol on our gatepost? When the sun came up, I grabbed the detergent and did what I'd already known I had to do. Soon, the sign of the cat again announced a kind lady's welcome, and this time, mine too. So, for those of you who do not know very much about the Great Depression is a time period that came around the 1930s, and it was one of the darker points in American history. There were a lot of food shortages, there was a lot of famine, and this is where people had a really hard time finding food, making any kind of money. Jobs were super scarce, and a lot of problems arose because of this. This story helps us realize that even in the hardest of times, humanity and being kind are important. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like. Bye.